Good morning, Integrated Math 1. So we're going to go ahead and move forward to the next section. I think we're going to call solving inequalities done, and we're just going to move ahead. So this is section 6.1, and it is all about solving proportions. So if you've never solved a proportion, that's totally fine. I'm going to show you step by step how to do it. It's actually quite simple. It is a very rinse and repeat method, meaning you do the same thing every single time in order to get your answer. So to start, let's look at what the definition of a proportion is. A proportion is simply an equation. See how we have an equal sign? It's an equation that states two fractions are equal. So here I have 3/9, that's one fraction, and it is equal to this other fraction, 6/x, and I don't know what x is, but I can actually solve for the value of x by solving the proportion. And to solve a proportion, you're going to do something called cross multiply. So what that means is that you're going to start with any value in this proportion, and you're going to go diagonally across from that value, okay? And you're going to multiply those two numbers. So what that means is if I start with the value of 3, okay, let me highlight this in pink. I'm going to go diagonally across from the 3, and I'm going to multiply it with the variable. And if I start with the 9 or even the 6, and I go diagonally across from it, I'm going to multiply the 9 and the 6. Okay, so let me highlight those. So this is what I'm going to have to do here. So let me go ahead and insert a text box so I can do my work. And maybe I'll try and color code things along the way if I can remember. So what that means is I have to take the 3 and I multiply it with the x, okay? And I also take the 9 and the 6 and I multiply it. Now, before I write my next cross product, I need to write an equal sign. So in every single proportion, when you cross multiply, those cross products are equal to each other. So one side of my equation is going to contain 3 times x, and the other side is going to contain 9 times 6. And it doesn't matter which number you start with, right? I could have said 6 times 9. And it also doesn't matter which cross product you start with. I could have put the 9 times 6 on the left side and the 3 times x on the right. It does not matter, so long as you're multiplying the correct things together and putting an equal sign in between. Okay, so to solve this equation, I now simplify where possible. Well, 3 times x, I can simply write it as 3x. 9 times 6, that's going to give me, if I use a calculator, and I encourage you to do so, to double check your mental math, 9 times 6 gives me 54, okay? So this is where I'm at right now. So I need to solve this equation. It's a one-step equation. I just need to get rid of that 3 right there. In order to get rid of the 3, I'm going to divide both sides by 3, okay? 3x means 3 times x. The inverse of multiplication is to divide. These 3's are going to cancel out, and using my calculator again, 54 divided by 3 equals 18. Here's my final answer. I'm just going to put a box around it so you guys can really see it here. Here's my final answer. And of course, make it see-through so you actually can see it. So to reiterate, a proportion is just two fractions that are equal to each other, so it's an equation. And to solve it, you're just going to multiply across and set those products equal. And then you're just going to solve it. And the solving process is really just, a repeat of what we've been doing with solving equations and inequalities. You simplify and then you isolate the variable using inverse operations. Okay, so let's do a few more. It's not going to be a very quick lesson today. So I have 2/8 equals 8/x. I can solve for this variable x by cross multiplying. That means I'm going to multiply the 2 with the x and the 8 with the 8. Okay, and I'm going to color code things so you can see. So the 2 and the x are going to get multiplied. And this 8 is going to get multiplied with this 8. Okay, so I'm going to insert a text box here so I can do my workout. And again, it doesn't matter which, cross product you start with. I could start with the 8 if I wanted to. So 8 times 8, let's do that one first this time. Well, that's got to be equal to the other cross product, which is 2 times x. And now that I have an equation ready to go, I can solve it. 8 times 8, I can simplify that to 64. 2 times x, that's just going to give me 2x. So to get the x by itself, 2x, that's multiplication, I need to divide both sides by 2. So I'm going to divide the left side by 2 and the 2x by 2. When I divide 2x by 2, that's going to leave me with x. 64 divided by 2 is going to give me 32. Okay, so here's my answer, my final answer. Just going to put a box around it so you can really see it. So again, I just cross multiplied. I set those cross products equal, simplify, and solve. B over 5 equals 8 over 4. So again, I'm going to take this b value and go diagonally across and multiply it with the 4. So that's going to be one of my cross products. B times 4. And my other cross product is going to be 5 times, oops, I didn't mean to color it. I meant to highlight it. B times 5. There it is. And I'm going to insert another text box so I can type my work, make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so one of my cross products is going to contain b times 4. And again, it doesn't matter if you started with the 5 and the 8. You should get the same answer no matter what. And I'm going to put an equal sign. Remember, these cross products always have to be set equal to each other. And the other cross product is going to contain 5 times 8, or 8 times 5. Order doesn't matter. And then I simplify and solve. B times 4 is just 4b. All I can do is write that 4 in front of the variable touching. If they're touching, that means multiplication. And then 5 times 8 gives me 40. To solve for b, I do the inverse of multiplication. 4b needs to be divided by 4. And if I divide the left side by 4, I gotta divide the right side by 4. b is now alone. 40 divided by 4 gives me 10. Whoops. So b equals 10 is my final answer. Sorry if you hear my cat. Oh, she just jumped on the desk. I may have to kick her out. She's being a little noisy. She hears my voice when I do these lessons, and she gets a little noisy. All right, a couple more examples, and then we'll wrap it up. So, also notice that it says round to the nearest tenth if necessary. That means that if I get a decimal, I want to make sure I'm rounding it. So just looking at these two examples here, what do you notice is different? Well, you may have already noticed, but what's different, Sue, please leave the laptop alone. Shoo, 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 Sue, shoo. What's different is that the variable has a number in front of it. So the only difference that's going to make is when I do my cross product, whatever I multiply with this variable, I need to multiply that number with this as well. Okay, so let me go ahead and highlight. The 4 diagonally across from it is going to get multiplied with the 4x. So not just x, but a 4x. So that means when I do this, I'm going to have to multiply these two 4's together. And then my next cross product is going to be 8 and 8. So let me go ahead and insert a text box. Make it a little bigger. So one of my cross products is going to contain the 4, and it's going to get multiplied with the 4x. Cross product number 1. I'm going to set it equal to my other cross product, which is going to contain 8 times 8. And then I simplify and solve. So 4 times 4x, all I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply those two 4's together. Now be careful, we're not adding here, we're multiplying. 4 times 4 gives us 16. So if in your head you got 8x, that's because you were adding the two numbers. We're not adding, we're multiplying here. And then 8 times 8 gives us 64. To get the x by itself, 16x, it's touching, that means multiplication. Opposite of that is to divide by 16. So I'm going to do that to both sides. 64 also gets divided by 16. The x is now alone, and then if I use my calculator and divide 64 by 16, I get 4. Haven't needed to round yet. I'm hoping I'll need to round for the last one. So here's my final answer. Okay, so I've got 7 over 4 equals 5x over 7. So one of my cross products is going to contain 7, and then diagonally across from that is 7. My other cross product is going to contain 4, and then diagonally across from that is a 5x. So I'm going to insert a text box so I can do my work. You guys won't have to insert text boxes. I already have them there for you. And now I'm going to set up my equation and solve. One of my cross products is going to be 7 times 7. And again, it doesn't matter which one you start with. I could have done the green terms on the left if I wanted to. I just don't feel like it. And then my other cross product is going to contain 4 times 5x. And I'm going to color code that so you can really see. And now I simplify and solve. 7 times 7 gives me 49. And then again, 4 times 5x, you're multiplying the 4 and the 5. You are not adding. 4 times 5 gives me 20. Okay, now to get the x by itself, this 20 that's touching means multiplication. I want to do the opposite and divide. And I'm going to do it to both sides. Divide the left side by 20. Divide the 20x by 20. The x will be alone on the right. And if I do 49 divided by 20 in my calculator, I'm actually getting a decimal, okay? And the instructions are telling me round to the nearest tenth. So if you look at where my cursor just highlighted, the 4, that's the tenths place. That's the number I want to round. So if you recall, when we round, we look just to the right of the number we want to round. If it's 5 or more, we raise this score. If this is 4 or less, we let this rest. So since this is 5 or more, I'm going to raise the score, meaning I'm going to bump that 4 up to a 5, and then I don't write any other numbers to the right of that. Everything else gets dropped. So that's rounded to the nearest tenth. And here is my final answer. Oops. And then that's the final example. So go ahead, give your online learning slides a try. They're going to be due on Wednesday, and I'll have a worksheet with some examples to guide you, just like last time. A worksheet will be due on Friday. Don't forget to hit turn in when you're ready for me to grade it. And if you're running into problems, leave comments. You can send me questions through email. Just let me know if you need any help whatsoever. All right, take care, guys.